I've never seen a grown man call a spreadsheet fugly in front of two VPs and a CEO, and then high-five a junior analyst like he just cured cancer. But here we are. That's how Brent Mallory made his entrance into our lives. Part CFO, part reality TV villain, all hair gel and high-risk bonuses. He came in on the tail end of the Cinergrow-Creston merger, of those buzzword bonanzas, where half the company gets reorged and the other half gets panic attacks. Brent got installed like a Chrome extension no one asked for, with a resume full of transformative fiscal strategies and a LinkedIn profile that looked like it was built in a tanning salon. I'd been with Creston for 15 years, long enough to have seen 3 CEOs, 4 accounting systems, and more burnt-out finance managers than I could count on a TI-84. My name's Miranda Jensen. I don't cry at work. I don't bring cupcakes to meetings. I don't use pivot tables unless I can weaponize them. And I sure as hell don't play nice when some spreadsheet-skimming frat ghost starts tearing apart the quiet little order I've carved into this chaos. First day Brent walks in, he scans the office like he's casing a casino. Wow, he mutters to no one. You guys still use folders? Then, right in front of the team. He points at my desk, smirks, and says, someone still believes in filing cabinets, I guess. Cute. I forced a smile so tight I could feel my molars shift. It was only Monday. He hit the ground running, slashing our review windows, pushing up close deadlines, and demanding flashier reporting. Said we needed pizzazz in our numbers. Like we were selling soda, not reconciling six-figure vendor slippage. Every email from him read like it had been drafted by a Red Bull intern. Every Zoom call ended with him flexing about hitting margins like it was a CrossFit PR. Meanwhile, I was quietly bleeding hours. Staying late with cold coffee and corporate silence, trying to untangle the rat king of budget anomalies Brent kept pretending didn't exist. Q2 had vendor redundancies that looked like someone was invoicing twice under different LLCs. Q3 had a discretionary fund spike right before executive bonuses hit. Q4? Let's just say we were miraculously under budget by exactly the amount of a canceled software contract that plot twist was never actually canceled. Nobody cared, not compliance, not procurement, not even Janice from accounts payable, who once reported someone for using Comic Sans in an invoice. Everyone was in merger survival mode, heads down, lips sealed, just praying their badge still scanned next quarter. I brought it up, carefully, 3 times. The first time, Brent blinked slowly and said, Miranda, you're overthinking, we're streamlining, not scrutinizing. The second time, he cut me off mid-sentence and said, let's table the paranoia. The third time, he smiled and asked if I was getting enough sunlight. I laughed politely. Then I started making backups, not just of the spreadsheets, of the receipts, email threads, ledger logs, time-stamped revisions with notes like Brent changed formula manually at 10:12 a.m. Call it paranoia. I called it insurance. Oh, and quick thing. If you're still here listening, only 3% of folks who hear these stories actually hit that follow button. It's wild. That number makes my Excel formulas cry. So if you're one of the smart ones who likes truth bombs and karma spreadsheets, go ahead, hit follow. It seriously means a lot to the crew who helps put these together. Anyway, by the end of October, I had enough data to choke a mainframe, and Brent was planning a flashy year-end review, already bragging about record efficiencies. Meanwhile, I was building something, quietly, carefully. Call it ugly if you want, but every ugly tab had a name. Every formula had a fingerprint, and every discrepancy had a shadow. The room smelled like burned coffee and corporate fear. Kind of scent you only get when 30 people are trapped in a conference room and the CFO has a microphone. All right, folks, Brent said, striding in like a game show host on a sugar bender, time to dazzle me with decimals. It was the annual budget review. Everyone was suited up like it was prom night for finance. Big screens, bigger egos, and enough clicker remotes to launch a NASA shuttle. I sat near the far end, spine straight, hands folded, with my little USB drive containing the ugliest spreadsheet in company history, and also the only one that wouldn't get us sued. He started with fluff. PowerPoint slides full of vague rainbows and YOY synergy gains. A graph that looked suspiciously like it had been stretched from a PowerPoint template called Tech Unicorn Quarterly. People nodded. Some clapped. At one point, he referred to a 0.7% variance as a heroic turnaround. And came the part where Brent said, let's bring in some deep dives, and motioned to me with a smirk like I was about to show off a third-grade diorama. Miranda Jensen's got some? Interesting models. Buckle up, folks. I plugged in the USB. My spreadsheet bloomed on screen like a cursed lotus, tabs layered in aggressive color codes, notes nested 5 deep, references to vendor reports that hadn't been seen by daylight since Q1. Brent squinted at it theatrically, then chuckled. Loud. God, what is this? Excel vomit? He leaned back in his chair, let out a showman's sigh. Looks like someone gave a highlighter to a raccoon. A few chuckles rippled across the room. Polite, hesitant. Not because it was funny, but because Brent's laughter was contagious in the way mold is. Contagious and hard to scrape off. I smiled, just barely. The kind of smile you wear when you're being handed a pink slip in a Build-A-Bear workshop. Inside, something snapped. Not like a bone, but like a gear shifting. I'd spent 15 years chasing integrity through spreadsheets. I'd believed in clean numbers the way other people believe in horoscopes or low-sodium diets. But right then, looking at my spreadsheet-turned punchline on a 90-inch screen, I stopped documenting the truth for truth's sake, and I started documenting it for court. I sat through the rest of the meeting like a mannequin with a migraine. Brent paraded through the numbers like a magician pulling savings out of hats I knew were stuffed with cooked expenses. He even called one of the slides the Brent bump and winked at the CFO of Global. Everyone laughed like that was normal. Me? I stared at my laptop. I knew what he'd done. He'd shifted expenses from vendor contracts into consulting line items and buried the consulting under strategic initiatives. He'd written off software we still used and double-counted onboarding reimbursements for managers who had already quit. His bonus threshold was tied to 3 margin metrics he'd massaged like a desperate masseuse during layoff week. But none of it mattered. Not yet, because all they could see was the pretty narrative. Brent, the golden boy who streamlined operations and revitalized the budget culture. Me, just the woman who brought an ugly spreadsheet to prom. So I watched, I listened. I smiled when Brent called my file a numbers dungeon and made another crack about needing a decoder ring just to find the net revenue. But behind that smile, the tabs kept spinning in my head, every formula, every timestamp, every one of his fingerprints buried in false efficiency. And for the first time, I wasn't just trying to survive the meeting. I was preparing for war. Night, the office was quieter than a prayer in an empty church. I sat at my desk under the grim flicker of the dying fluorescent above me, the one no one ever reported because it kept the interns from loitering near the break room. My back hurt, my neck ached. But it was my pride that stung the worst, like I'd swallowed a porcupine dipped in regret. I double-clicked the file Brent mocked, the one that made grown men laugh into their free coffee. It loaded like a slow confession. Tab after tab, color-coded chaos. But to me it was scripture, not ugly, not random. Honest, the names of vendors, payment logs, time-stamped comments. See note J14 whispered like breadcrumbs in a forest full of wolves. I'd spent months cross-referencing documents no one thought to question. I wasn't even sure why at first. Just a feeling like something sour hiding in the walls of an otherwise sparkling kitchen. The deeper I went, the more the moments returned, quiet, stupid little signs I'd brushed off. That expense report in April, where Brent corrected a $12,600 figure into around $15,000 and told me round numbers look cleaner on reports. The Q2 reconciliation, where he flagged a vendor payout as duplicate and removed it, only for a different department to log the exact same amount days later under a separate cost center. Or that time in July, he sent me a corrected sheet at 11:57 p.m., 3 minutes before closeout, while accidentally removing the footnotes I'd spent 4 hours building. None of it felt big in the moment. That's how they get you, not with fireworks, with paper cuts. But now, under the fluorescent strobe of shame and a half-eaten protein bar, I saw the pattern, not sloppiness, intent. Brent wasn't bad with numbers, he was better than anyone. Too good. Smart enough to make the lies look like margin wins. And he was counting on the fact that most people don't read cell notes. Don't question rolled-up line items. Don't care enough to dig. But I did, and now that spreadsheet, it wasn't just documentation. It was testimony, evidence, a weapon. Every ugly tab was a footprint in the snow leading straight to him. I zoomed in on a chart, Q3 discretionary spending. There it was again. Spikes 2 weeks before performance reviews. Discretionary my ass, that wasn't strategy, it was padding. I stared at the file for a long time, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I could feel the shift in my bones, not just anger anymore, not sadness, strategy. I wasn't going to HR. HR reported to Brent. I wasn't going to legal. Legal played golf with Brent. I was going to document, archive, copy, timestamp. Every move from now on would be deliberate. There was a hotline, a whisper tip email for audit concerns. Most people thought it was fake, some internal theater meant to scare lower management straight. But I knew it wasn't. And when the time came, they wouldn't need a smoking gun. They'd need a spreadsheet, an honest one, an ugly one, and I had it. It started in the copy room, the whispered crossroads of truth and toner. I was standing by the printer, waiting on 40 pages of vendor audit logs when I heard it. 2 marketing analysts, low voices, behind the half-closed supply closet door. Said Brent added a strategic consulting fee line item the day before the budget closed. Again? Jesus, that's like the 3rd time. One of them laughed nervously. He said, it's optics. Nobody audits optics. They didn't know I was there. Didn't know I was the one who flagged that exact item 3 weeks earlier and got told by Brent to spend less time fact-checking and more time formatting. They also didn't know that I stopped printing things on the shared copier right after that. From then on, it was private printer only. Paper trail stays in my drawer. When I walked out, I didn't say a word. Just smiled like I hadn't heard a damn thing. But inside, something coiled tighter. It wasn't just me seeing the cracks anymore. Still, that didn't mean I had allies. There's a difference between witnessing a fire and being willing to hold the arsonist's name up to the wind. The juniors in finance, they were either drinking the Kool-Aid or choking on it. I once asked Travis, fresh out of grad school with a necktie he couldn't quite wrangle, about a weird doubling in vendor credits. He looked at me like I'd asked him to testify in a murder trial. Brent reviewed that one, he said, eyes darting. He said it was a formatting thing. You know, formatting. Sure, Travis. Formatting that magically makes $24,000 disappear into a miscellaneous bucket shaped like a Cayman shell corp. HR? Forget it. The same woman who used to schedule yoga mindfulness breaks now clutched her HR binder like it was body armor. Brent had her wrapped tighter than the break room cling film. And besides, you don't bite the hand that signs your bonus reviews, so I stopped looking for someone to talk to. I started looking for places to hide the truth. I created a mirrored folder on a private cloud under a fake consulting firm name, MJ Analysis Group, just enough plausible deniability if anyone stumbled across the logins. I didn't upload anything directly from my work laptop. Everything got zipped, encrypted, and scrubbed before transfer. Emails, sent to myself through a burner Proton Mail account. No subject lines. File names like Client Ref 042 or Budget Comp 3 Final 7 to blend into the digital noise. Just enough to track changes without raising eyebrows. I used my lunch breaks to scan in physical contracts Brent thought had been filed away. Turns out our scanner saves backups for a full 30 days if you know where to look. I even made a habit of tapping the edge of my keyboard 3 times before sending anything major. A dumb little ritual, but it helped with the nerves, like knocking on wood before stepping into a storm. Because make no mistake, this was a storm. And I didn't know who else was in it with me, or if I was the only one standing in the lightning with a metal rod and a prayer. Every day, the paranoia deepened. Someone lingered a little too long near my desk during coffee breaks. Brent started referencing loyalty in all-hands meetings, smiling that tight politician smile like he was reading names off a list in his head. And through it all, my little ugly spreadsheet grew fatter and meaner, gathering teeth, sharpening claws. I didn't know when it would be time to use it, but I knew it was coming. And when it did, I wouldn't knock. I'd kick the damn door off its hinges. By mid-November, my original spreadsheet had mutated into something else entirely. Second file, buried behind 3 password-protected folders on a thumb drive I kept in the bottom of my travel mug. I called it Shadow Ledger XLSX. Not exactly subtle, but hell, the truth rarely is. It wasn't just reconciliation anymore. This file was pure anatomy, Brent's anatomy. His decisions, his initiatives, his sleights of hand. A dissection of arrogance wrapped in formulas and formatted cells. I built it line by line, bite by bite, between budget calls and fake lunch breaks, always with one eye on the hallway and another on the clock. I started pulling quarterly summaries from our archived accounting server. Not the polished reports Brent handed out like candy, but the raw stuff, vendor disbursement logs, payment timestamps, ledger movement trails. And that's when I found it, the pattern. Each quarter, like clockwork, Brent would initiate budget adjustments about 10 days before close. Not flashy, not massive, but deliberate. Q1, $46,000 shifted from training to executive development. Q2, $58,200 moved from equipment to external partnerships. Q3, $73,000 yanked from employee recognition and dumped into a black hole labeled innovation synergy. In each case, those adjustments just happened to push our operational margin past the bonus trigger thresholds outlined in Brent's contract. I had a copy of that contract. HR, bless their incompetent hearts, once left the CFO's compensation packet in the shared drive for an entire weekend before remembering how folders work. I downloaded it that Saturday while watching Law and Order reruns. Call it fate? Or maybe just the universe whispering, take the damn receipt. Clause was clear. If Brent hit a 14.5% margin by close of Q3, he earned a $200K retention bonus. Q4 was even sweeter. Anything over 15% meant another $300K and a performance share vest. And wouldn't you know it, each quarterly margin barely squeaked above those lines. Like a student who always just barely gets in a by changing the date on a forgotten extra credit assignment. He was massaging the books. Not enough to scream fraud at first glance, but enough to make any auditor tilt their head. I started documenting vendor calls, noting invoice dates that didn't match disbursement records. Every time Brent moved a line item, it left a fingerprint in the metadata. And every time he uploaded a final version of the budget, I pulled the raw edit logs from the accounting system's backend. They didn't know I still had legacy admin access from our pre-merger system. Brent certainly didn't. It was an oversight on its part. Their oversight, my weapon. Then came the company-wide compliance training. One of those CYA modules that everyone speed clicks through while scrolling TikTok. But this time, tucked between the slides on phishing scams and ethics guidelines, was a new one, slide 37. Financial irregularity reporting. Anonymous audit hotline employees can report potential financial misconduct anonymously through the audit committee email or via voicemail. All submissions are confidential. I paused, read it twice. Took a screenshot, saved the number, there it was. My endgame, my escape hatch, my clean kill. I didn't use it, not yet, but I knew I would. The Miranda who sat silently through Brent's jokes 2 months ago was gone. What remained was surgical exacting. I'd stopped reacting. Now I was planning, tracking, building a noose from numbers and waiting for the right moment to tighten it around Brent's golden boy neck. And when I pulled, it'd be with a whisper, not a scream. The email was 26 words. No greeting, no signature. Just enough smoke to make someone sniff for fire. Subject, potential discrepancies in Q2/Q3 discretionary budget allocation. Body, recommend review of payment adjustments dated Sep 2229. Figures deviate from standard reconciliation logic. Source, internal. I sent it from a VPN-routed one-time email address at 2:37 a.m. on a Tuesday, the kind of hour where you start questioning your grip on reality and your caffeine intake. Then I deleted everything, cleared browser logs, pulled the thumb drive, buried it back inside the false bottom of my travel mug, and walked into the kitchen to stare at my toaster like it might give me absolution. By Thursday, the air changed. Not visibly, not loudly, but you could feel it. People started replying to emails faster. The finance VP stopped joking about beers after this quarter. The internal compliance guy, Greg, who once fell asleep during a 401k lunch seminar, suddenly had meetings blocked off with someone from legal. And Brent? Brent was planning a spectacle. Annual review's gonna be a showstopper. He grinned in the Friday sink, sipping from a mug that said #finance daddy. We'll lead with margin wins, then toss in that exec dev spend, get him emotional. I want jaws on floors, Miranda. Jaws on floors, I nodded, clicked mute, breathed through my teeth. On the outside, I was water, calm, clear, unbothered. On the inside, my organs were chewing through each other like they were late on rent. Because the longer this stretched, the tighter the noose got. If Brent caught wind, even a hint, I was done. Not just fired, blacklisted. Branded a disgruntled staffer, that corporate ghost label HR uses to exercise anyone who tells the truth too clearly. But I'd chosen this. No turning back now. Monday morning, 8:42 a.m., an email pinged my inbox. From Audits at RKM Globalcom subject, request for preliminary Q3 materials. Miranda, your name was provided as point of contact for legacy budget records. Can you share reconciliations from July through September? We'd like to begin preliminary review this week. I stared at it for a full minute. My name. They'd connected the dots, or someone had drawn a dotted line and they traced it right back to me. I answered in under 5 minutes, attaching a sanitized version of Shadow Ledger XLSX. Not the full beast, just enough teeth to get them curious. I flagged 3 anomalies, no conclusions, just questions. Within an hour, I got a call from a number with a Delaware area code. It lasted 12 minutes, mostly confirmations. Nothing scary, but their tone, surgical, no nonsense, they knew. Not everything, but enough. And that's when the schedule change came. Brent's big presentation had been slated for next Friday, an all-hands dog-and-pony show where he'd dazzle us with his Brent bump and a soundtrack from his college DJ days. But now, new calendar invite, subject, annual review revised time, Wednesday, 10 o'clock a.m. Guests, full exec staff plus external audit committee. I stared at it until my eyes burned. 3 days early. No buffer. No spin time. Brent didn't even know yet. He was still in a Slack thread planning the color theme for his intro slide. I leaned back in my chair and felt my pulse in my ears. 3 days. 3 days until Brent walked into his own execution dressed like a hero. 3 days until my ugly little spreadsheet made its grand debut. 3 days until everything either unraveled him or destroyed me. The conference room felt colder than usual, like someone had cracked a window to let the truth creep in. 10 minutes to 10. The walls hummed with fluorescent tension. Leather chairs squeaked as VPs shuffled in, pretending they didn't rehearse their reactions in the mirror that morning. Brent had requested light refreshments, so there was a sad tray of cheese cubes sweating under the projector. Someone had even lit a candle. Vanilla, like ambience, was going to save him. I sat in the back, third chair from the end. My seat of choice. Sight but not out of reach. USB in my bag. Backup copy in my inbox. Final version waiting in a folder labeled Q4 Backup Alt Final Review. 'Cause nothing screams professionalism like 11 underscores and a scream into the void. Brent strutted in 5 minutes late, all swagger and starch. Blue blazer, perfect fade, $1,000 smile. Let's light this thing up, he announced, clapping his hands like we were about to watch a halftime show. The only thing missing was a smoke machine. He clicked the remote and launched into it, slideshow full of transition effects so aggressive they should have come with a seizure warning. 2023, the comeback quarter, the first slide read, complete with stock photos of handshakes and sunsets. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, he said, pacing in front of the screen. We cut close. We moved fast. We made bold calls. But I'm proud to say, we're closing the books on one of the cleanest fiscal years in recent history. He paused, dramatic, waiting for applause. Silence. He clicked again, pie charts, bar graphs, a weird animation of a rocket labeled strategic spend. Then came the kicker. And of course, he said with a theatrical sigh, we had our internal checkpoints. Our reconciliation deep dives, even Miranda's. What should we call it? He turned and flashed that condescending grin. Her war and piece of spreadsheets kept us honest, didn't it, folks? A few chuckles, nervous ones. I didn't laugh, I didn't blink. I didn't even look up because I knew he didn't, not yet. I watched him spin his narrative like cotton candy, light, sugary, no substance. He talked about discretionary alignments and executive synergy portfolios like they meant something. Like he hadn't built them out of duct tape and doctored margins. Just when he clicked to the slide labeled Efficiency Bonus Alignment Q3/Q4, the door opened. Two people walked in. They didn't belong. No one said a word, but everyone knew. The suits were too sharp, the clipboards too empty. The way they scanned the room, clinical, precise. Auditors. Brent froze mid-sentence, just for a second, barely a hiccup, but I saw it, the flicker, the kernel of dread blooming in the base of his neck. Sorry, one of them said. Didn't mean to interrupt. We were invited to observe the reconciliation segment. Their voices were smooth, professional, like knives wrapped in velvet. Brent smiled, too wide, too fast. Of course, he said, motioning toward the open seats near the projector. We welcome the transparency. He fumbled the remote, clicked twice by accident. A chart popped up that wasn't supposed to be there. Discretionary allocations, side by side, 2 columns. Identical numbers in July and September, 2 identical. The room didn't breathe. I did, calm, still, watching. I hadn't said a single word. I didn't need to because my silence was a spotlight. And Brent? Brent was center stage. The room had the stillness of a poker table seconds before the final card hits. Brent was trying to recover, clicking furiously through his deck, rambling about forward-looking metrics and next-phase synergy. Words hit the table like cold pancakes. Flat, greasy, unwanted. One of the auditors leaned forward. Gray suit, neat haircut, voice like someone who'd sent people to jail with it. Brent, he said casually before we go any further, could we take a look at the reconciliation file that was referenced in the anonymous submission? You could hear it, that subtle, collective exhale, the sound of 30 stomachs tightening at once. Brent blinked. Once. Twice. I'm sorry, which file? He asked, suddenly smaller than his blazer. The original Q3 reconciliation, the auditor said, opening his laptop with the kind of slowness that implies a noose is being tied. It was referenced in the preliminary documentation. We assumed you had it on hand. It's quite detailed. Brent glanced around the room like maybe someone would bail him out. No one did. The silence was a betrayal in itself. I'm not sure I've seen that one, he said, voice thinning. Be a miscommunication? There are multiple working versions of I have it, I said. 3 words, calm, even, they dropped like a gavel. I reached into my bag and slid the USB across the table. No flourish, no speech, just a tired hand delivering the truth. Brent stared at it like it was ticking. The auditor picked it up without hesitation, plugged it in. The projector blinked, then filled with the cold glow of my ugly masterpiece. Tabs, notes, color codes, timestamps, Shadow Ledger MJ version 1 by 1, they open each tab. Vendor payments, budget shifts, bonus clauses, every entry hyperlinked to internal documents. Every adjustment annotated with the original values, then the altered ones. Side by side, layered like a forensic autopsy. The auditor scrolled silently, then paused. Interesting, he said, tapping the screen. This vendor was paid twice within 48 hours under 2 different GL codes. Brent shifted in his seat. That could be a payment error. We've had software issues with Oracle this year. Miranda, did you verify this with? The auditor raised a hand. It's verified. There's a scanned copy of the second invoice here. Different PO, same date stamp, same service. More scrolling. Another auditor leaned over. And here, this discretionary reallocation. Moved 2 days before the quarter closed. Pushed the margin just over the 14.5 threshold. Remarkable timing. Brent opened his mouth, closed it. Someone coughed. No one laughed because the story was telling itself now and no one liked the ending. The CEO sat forward, lips tight, jaw twitching. The head of HR paled. One of the VPs, the same one who laughed when Brent called my spreadsheet Excel vomit, looked down at his lap like a schoolboy caught cheating. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just watched. It wasn't satisfaction like a champagne toast. It was quieter, duller, like finally setting down a heavy bag you've carried too long, because this wasn't vindication. It was verification that I wasn't crazy, that the cracks were real, that the truth, ugly, bloated, color-coded, had finally been seen. Brent rubbed the back of his neck and mumbled something about reviewing protocols, but no one was listening to him anymore. They were listening to the spreadsheet. Brent's mouth was still moving, but none of the words made it out. It looked like he was buffering. The lead auditor closed the laptop slowly, deliberately, and turned to him with the kind of stillness that only precedes a demolition. Let's step into a conference room, he said, just you and us. Brent blinked twice, then again slower. His skin had gone the color of unprinted checks, gray-green, waxy, like someone had pulled the blood straight out of his bonus account. He stood, legs stiff, like he wasn't sure if the floor would cooperate. The second auditor, short, quiet, no nonsense, nodded to HR. She was already standing. Legal followed. Neither of them made eye contact with anyone. They left the room in a hush. No raised voices, no slammed doors, just the whisper of consequences sliding down the hallway in polished shoes. Someone cleared their throat. Someone else tapped a pen nervously. The projector went dark. Still, no one moved. I gathered my things slowly, closed my laptop, slipped the USB back into my bag like it was a loaded weapon I'd finally holstered. The CFO seat at the front of the table, empty. By 3:00 p.m., word had trickled out like oil on tile. Brent had been placed on administrative leave pending audit findings. By 4:15, he was seen packing a single box at his desk, eyes hollow, lips tight, flanked by a VP from legal and the woman from HR who once complimented his watch. No speeches, no handshake, no more high fives. The man who mocked my spreadsheet had been undone by it, and me, I stayed at my desk, finished up payroll adjustments, sent 3 emails, approved 2 invoice revisions. At 5:07, I received a message from the lead auditor. Subject, thank you body, Miranda, what you did took clarity and grit. I don't know if anyone will say it publicly, but I want you to know we saw it. We saw you, thank you. JW attached was a scanned photo of a handwritten note. Just 2 lines, ugly spreadsheets save lives. Keep building the honest ones. A month later, without ceremony or announcement, my title changed in the company directory. Miranda Jensen, Chief Financial Officer. No email blast, no catered lunch. Just a new placard slid onto my door and a budget review file that no one dared second guess. I didn't feel powerful, I felt still. Like after a storm. When the gutters are full and the trees are broken, but the air finally breathes again. This wasn't revenge. Not really. It was truth with teeth. And all it took was one woman, one ugly spreadsheet, and the will to watch the golden boy fall without saying a damn word. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.